Welcome back to Nightmare Stories, where we explore the most chilling tales from the darkest corners of reality. In today's episode, we bring you 5 terrifying real-life horror stories that happened to ordinary people. Remember, these stories are based on real events, so prepare to be spooked. We invite you to share your own horror stories in the comments below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more spine-tingling content. Our first story comes from a personal submission by a woman named Lisa. Lisa had been living alone in her one-bedroom apartment for a few months when she started noticing some strange occurrences. Food seemed to be disappearing from her kitchen, and her belongings appeared to have been moved or misplaced. Initially, she shrugged it off, believing she was just being forgetful or disorganized. However, when she returned home one day to find her bedroom door ajar, she knew that something was off. Concerned for her safety, Lisa decided to set up a hidden camera in her apartment to catch the culprit. She was expecting to see a nosy neighbor or maybe even an intruder, but what she discovered was far more chilling. Upon reviewing the footage, Lisa was horrified to see a man emerging from a small crawl space in her apartment late at night. The stranger would help himself to her food, use her bathroom, and even watch her sleep from a distance. The unwanted roommate had been secretly living in her apartment for months, completely unbeknownst to her. Terrified, Lisa immediately contacted the police, who arrested the man and charged him with trespassing, among other offenses. He was later revealed to be a homeless man seeking shelter and had somehow gained access to the crawl space. Despite the arrest, the chilling experience left Lisa feeling forever uneasy in her own home, and she eventually moved to another apartment in hopes of finding peace and security. Our next story comes from an online forum where a man named James shared his harrowing experience with a relentless stalker. James, a 30-year-old graphic designer, had always been an outgoing, friendly person who enjoyed meeting new people. Little did he know that his sociable nature would soon become a nightmare. It all began when James noticed a peculiar man in a hooded sweatshirt appearing everywhere he went. Whether he was at the grocery store, the gym, or even out with friends, the hooded man always seemed to be lurking just out of sight. At first, James thought it was a coincidence, but as the days turned into weeks, he realized he was being followed. The stalking intensified when the hooded man started leaving unnerving messages on James's car windshield, with phrases like, "I'm always watching you." One evening, James returned home to find his apartment door unlocked and his personal belongings rifled through. The stalker had broken in and left a chilling gift on his kitchen table, a box filled with photos of James going about his daily life, some taken from just a few feet away. Frightened and desperate for help, James contacted the police, who advised him to document the incidents and gather evidence for a restraining order. As he continued to record the stalker's unsettling behavior, James managed to capture a clear photo of the man's face, which he then shared with friends and family. In a shocking twist, one of James's acquaintances recognized the stalker as a former co-worker who had been fired for harassment. Armed with this information, James was able to obtain a restraining order, and the hooded man was eventually arrested for stalking. This terrifying tale was shared by a group of friends who decided to spend the night in a seemingly normal suburban home. The friends, Alex, Katie, Max, and Emily, were college students looking for a fun and inexpensive way to spend their weekend. They found an affordable house to rent for a night on a popular home-sharing platform, and the owner assured them that the place was perfect for their sleepover plans. Upon arrival, the house seemed like a typical suburban dwelling, a charming 2-story structure with a well-manicured lawn. The friends settled in, ordering pizza and watching movies as they laughed and enjoyed each other's company. However, as the night wore on, they began to experience a series of strange and unnerving events. First, they heard footsteps upstairs when they were all seated in the living room. They initially dismissed it as a noisy neighbor or the house settling, but when Max went to investigate, he discovered that all the bedroom doors were now inexplicably closed. Later, as they played a board game, they noticed objects moving on their own, as if pushed by an unseen force. The atmosphere in the house became increasingly oppressive, and the friends couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Eventually, they decided to call it a night, and tried to get some sleep. But as they lay in their respective rooms, they could hear strange whispers and an eerie scratching sound coming from the walls. In the morning, still rattled by the night's events, the friends decided to do some research on the house. To their horror, they discovered that it had once been the scene of a gruesome crime. A family had been brutally murdered within its walls, and the spirits of the victims were believed to still haunt the location. Unable to shake the chilling memories of their sleepover, the friends vowed never to set foot in that house again, and shared their experience as a warning to others about the unseen dangers that can lurk within seemingly ordinary places. Our final story comes from an anonymous source who experienced a series of disturbing phone calls from an unknown caller. The person, whom we'll call Jane, was a 28-year-old teacher who lived alone in a small apartment. One night, as she was grading papers, her phone rang. She answered only to be greeted by eerie silence. Jane hung up, thinking it was a prank call or a wrong number. However, the strange calls persisted. Night after night, Jane would receive chilling messages, threats, and even recordings of her own conversations with friends and family. The unknown caller seemed to know intimate details about her life, from her daily schedule to her favorite coffee shop. Jane became increasingly paranoid and frightened, unsure of how to protect herself from this unseen menace. Desperate for answers, she hired a private investigator to trace the calls and uncover the identity of her tormentor. The investigator discovered that the calls were coming from a burner phone, making them difficult to trace. But after weeks of diligent work, they finally traced the calls to a shocking source. One of Jane's close friends, who had become dangerously obsessed with her. Confronted with the truth, the friend confessed to making the calls, admitting that their obsession had spiraled out of control. With the help of law enforcement, the nightmare was finally put to an end, and the friend was charged with stalking and harassment. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Nightmare Stories. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other episodes and playlists for more bone-chilling content. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on our latest paranormal investigations and spine-tingling discoveries. Until next time, stay safe and keep exploring the unknown.